Hello, welcome back to my channel. It's the second video on this new YouTube channel, and today I'm so excited because I'm sharing with you my favorite ways to get herbal medicines into my children. That sounds kind of strange. I'm sharing my favorite ways to get my children to take herbal medicines. I think that sounds better. I'm also going to share with you how to make a simple Boneset syrup for flu-like symptoms or those aches and pains that you often get when you're sick. So, if you have ever taken any medicinal teas or herbal tinctures, you're probably aware that they don't taste so great. While most adults can actually just take an herbal tincture like directly into the mouth or make like an herbal little cocktail with some water and tincture and swig the whole thing down, most children are not going to do that. A lot of the medicinal herbs are very are very bitter and not very palatable. And a lot of parents struggle to get their children to eat more vegetables and salad. So I can't even imagine what it would look like if we tried to get our children to swallow these bitter herbs. Don't get me wrong, I don't think medicine should taste good. On the contrary, I think that it's meant to taste gross. Otherwise, we take too much of it. I think this happens often in Western medicine. And I don't think that would be such an issue if everybody was relying on herbal medicine to help heal them, because let's face it, it doesn't taste good. It tastes like, well, medicine. But there are a few tricks to make it more palatable so that if you're sensitive like me, you can get it down, or if you have kids, you can get them to take it. Do you remember Mary Poppins? The original, not the new one. And yes, I'm totally dating myself. I don't even know when that first one came out, but I do remember watching it growing up in the 80s and 90s. And there's that one song.
That a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, the medicine go down, medicine go down.
I never really understood that song growing up because I wasn't raised in an era where my mother and grandmother were going out and picking herbs and making concoctions and teas at home. But that old message that Mary Poppins sings is still valid. The best way to get herbal medicine into your children is through sugar. It's through glycerides or vegetable glycerin and syrups like honey. They're super easy to make and they're way more palatable than a tea or an alcohol tincture, which we probably shouldn't give our children anyway. So like I mentioned, today I'm teaching you how to make a really simple Boneset syrup and also sharing how I got my oldest son to take this syrup when he was struggling with flu-like aches and pains. So without further ado, let's dive in.
So Boneset, or Euphautorium perfoliatum, is also known as feverwort or Indian sage, among other names. It was commonly used in 19th century America, extensively used by natives and early settlers.
And it was wildly used with success during flu epidemics. It has a long list of medicinal properties, so I'm just going to read it from here and not try to memorize that. It's an immunostimulant, a diaphoretic, anti-inflammatory, bitter, smooth muscle relaxant, antibacterial, antiviral, circulatory stimulant, and an analgesic. It's traditionally used for flu with fever, chills, pain in joints and bones, common cold, it loosens phlegm. It's great for malaria, staph, pneumonia, and it stimulates the production of white blood cells. The general rule of thumb when making any syrup is to use 8 ounces of water for every 1 ounce of herb. You want to invest in a small measuring scale if you haven't done so. You can find them on Amazon or any kitchen store, I assume. You want it to be small enough that it measures ounces. And when it comes to water, a lot of people recommend distilled water because, you know, it's clean. It's been boiled. It's not contributing to your syrup in a good or a bad way. I really like to use our Berkey water. I know that it's clean. I trust it. It's not dead water, right? It still has nutritional value, and I know that it's going to add to my syrups and tinctures. But in saying that, unless you know you have really clean water, I would suggest you go get distilled water. I appreciate the Berkey system because I don't have to go buy water. Some people really like to use spring water. It's really a personal preference. Just make sure you don't use tap water.
You're going to want to put the herbs in the water in a non-aluminum pan and bring that to a boil. Once it's at a boil, you turn off the heat and you let it steep overnight. And then it's time to strain. You clean the pan and put the Boneset liquid back in the pan, and you keep the lid off this time. At a very, very low heat, You don't want it to boil at all. You evaporate the liquid down to half of its original volume. Now you have your concoction that you're going to add your sweetener to. You want to add 40% volume of sweetener, like honey or pure vegetable glycerin, to your evaporated liquid. You want to make sure that the liquid is not too hot nor cold. You don't want it to scald whatever sweetener that you use, especially if you're using a raw honey. I really like honey. I like to get it from local sources so that I know that it's raw and also medicinal. Now you have your new syrup. I like to store my syrups in brown or blue bottles to prevent oxidation from light as long as possible. I store my syrups in the fridge, and I always make sure that they have a label with a date on them. That way I know when they expire. You'll know if an herb syrup expires. It kind of gets a funky taste. It's not going to hurt you, it just doesn't taste good, and then you know it's time to throw it out. But generally, honey herbal syrups can last anywhere up to 6 months. Glycerin can last even up to a year. Make sure when writing your label that you not only add the date, but whatever the medicinal properties are of the herbal syrup that you're storing. You especially want to mark if there are any contraindicators in the syrup. That way, if you have someone over or somebody gets into your fridge, there's no risk of somebody taking something that might harm them. Herbs are generally very, very safe, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. Now that we have the herbal syrup, we can serve it to our children. Boneset in particular is actually still pretty bitter, even with almost a cup of honey in it. So what I did was I served it to him 2 different ways. I put it in a smoothie where there's no way that he could taste it, and I also just served it up in a small glass of orange juice. I was adding other herbs to the orange juice and the smoothies to counteract other ailments he was experiencing, and he couldn't even taste them. So it's really, really easy to hide most herbal syrups, tinctures, and remedies into either juice or a smoothie. You can also add them into foods, but I like to make sure that they're getting the herbs in the most concentrated ways. And sometimes when you're cooking or using it with food, you can't be certain how much they're getting. So I like to just give a dose in a glass of juice. You have a really picky child, then you can put it in a smoothie. And those are the best ways to get the herbs down. A lot of syrups actually taste really good, like elderberry syrup. My kids love, and they'll just take a spoonful of that. But some other herbs like boneset can be more bitter and not as tasty, and so get it in however you have to get it in. For me, I don't mind giving my child a shot of orange juice every time they need an herbal remedy. They like the juice. Orange juice naturally is high in vitamin C, so I figure it's a win-win. If you have any other questions about boneset or any other herbal remedy, put it in the comments below. If you have something that you want to see, let me know. And please like this video and subscribe so that you don't miss when new videos are released. As always, thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye!